adjusting here. There we go. I think we're good there. Good there. All right. Awesome. All right, I think we're started. All right, happy Sunday, everyone. Today's conversation is going to be about talking about not feeling happy. Because as much as I am a happiness coach, there are times in life, welcome Manny, welcome. There's times in life that you are not going to feel happy, and that is okay. Being a happiness coach doesn't mean that you are some glassy-eyed freak that drank the Kool-Aid, okay? That is not what happiness is all about. In order for us to be actually truly happy, we need to be able to feel all of our emotions at their full capacity and allowing space for those emotions when they are not so happy. Now, there's different ways to deal with those certain things that come up, and to not take unhappy feelings out on the people around us. And there's ways to be unhappy productively, okay? So, example, if you have a situation that you were expecting a different outcome, you were hoping for something to go a certain way, and maybe it doesn't. Maybe you didn't get a job promotion, maybe you didn't get a house that you tried to buy, or you didn't get approved for a loan, or whatever it is, and now you're upset about that kind of stuff. And it's okay to feel upset about those kind of things and to acknowledge that. First thing that you're going to want to do is be aware of the emotions that are coming up for you. Understanding, how do you actually feel? Are you pissed off? Are you sad? Are you depressed? Do you feel anxious? Do you feel like, what the fuck's the point? Like, whatever, here it is again. This thing happened. Are you feeling that kind of down, maybe resentful too? It's okay. Acknowledge how it is that you're feeling without trying to change that you're not cool, buddy. Oh, cool. Quit acting because you're not. Oh, nice. There we go. All right. Night, James. Looks like you need a timeout. Bye. All right. Timeouts are actually a good thing too. So sometimes we almost need like a spanking put to bed. I know that's not a cool thing to do nowadays, but that was a joking thing that we'd say, and it would be said in times when a child is being irritable and unreasonable. And, you kind of give them a spanking on the butt and you put them to bed because they need a nap, right? So, nap. Having a nap is a great way to change your mood, accept how you're feeling, because a lot of times the emotions that are coming up can be because we are lacking sleep. We didn't get enough sleep. Or the sleep that we did get wasn't good quality sleep. So I know for a time there I had to get tested for sleep apnea. That affected my ability to sleep properly, and I'd wake up with headaches and stuff like that. So losing weight also helped that, so that I wasn't affected as badly about it. So that helped quite a bit. So not feeling well, all of those kind of things end up affecting our emotional state, giving ourselves some time, some space to go through and process those. I don't try to immediately change that state. I accept how I'm feeling at the time, and I look for different ways to channel that energy into something that is actually productive. So I take a stance of, you know what, if I'm going to be cranky, I'm going to be pissed off, I'm going to be upset about something, I might as well do the dishes. I might as well sweep the floor. I might as well, organize some things. If that's not a favorite activity, at least that way I'll put that energy into something that is productive. And usually by the time I'm at least done that, I feel somewhat better. Maybe not happy, but I at least feel like I've accomplished something. So this is a very productive way to channel that energy if you're feeling unhappy about something. Finding a creative outlet is good as well. So example, I do painting. Sometimes I'll, do different types of art. So it's not just a paint pour kind of thing that I have been doing lately. I do those. Taking the time to focus on that, playing music, whether you play an instrument or you sing or you dance or any of those kind of creative kind of activities helps quite a bit so that you can go through and process those emotions and just allow yourself to be in that moment of feeling how that you feel without having to actually change it. So if you're pissed off about something, be pissed off. It's okay. As long as you're not taking that out on anybody, you're giving yourself that time and space to actually feel it. And know that there is an energy behind that feeling, that you have to actually do something productive. Hey, Alfred, loving the nostril comments again. That's friggin' awesome. They're looking better and better every day. No, I do not like sushi. No, I do not like sushi. I've had the veggie stuff. It's okay, but yeah, it's not something that I'm fond of. So processing those emotions and finding a way to channel them into something that's actually productive is a good thing to do. So if you're feeling irritated about something, might as well cross something off your list that you were putting off of doing. I know we all have those kind of things, even the really, really productive people. There's something that, they don't like to do that they know they need to do, and they'll just kind of take some time and do that, especially if you're frustrated. At least out of that, you end up having the energy of you've crossed something off your list that was irritating you and you've gotten it done. So doing creative things is the second one, and sometimes giving yourself a break too. So sitting back. Hey, Seamus, good to see you. Welcome back. Cross-country skiing tomorrow. Okay. Cross-country skiing, I haven't done that in ages, actually. The last time I did it was on a school trip. We went to the Toronto Zoo, of all places, and they had cross-country skis there, and we went to the zoo, and then all the different pavilions, you kind of skied in between them, and then you would put your skis up, you'd go in the pavilion, walk around a little bit. That was actually quite fun. That was a school trip a few years ago. Just a couple. But yeah, so there's these things that you can do to help deal with any unhappy feelings that you have. And the first is acceptance of the fact that you're not feeling happy, acknowledging what it is that you are feeling, and finding a way to actually process those emotions. Okay, that is actually productive for you. I will oftentimes do something where I will learn something new. I have a few of my favorite entrepreneurs that I listen to on YouTube, and I will listen to their feedback. I'll listen to their stories. I'll listen to their coaching, their guidance, and that usually helps shift my perspective a little bit into something that is more productive. I figure if I'm going to be pissed off, I might as well work. and get something out of it. Work tends, and it's probably bordering on a little bit of unhealthy coping mechanisms, but of all the coping mechanisms I can have, being somebody that likes to work and just do something productive, there are way worse coping mechanisms. Now, if I'm doing that at the cost of myself or the cost of the people that I love or care for, then that's a bit of a problem and that needs to be addressed. However, if doing something productive shifts me out of that mind state where I'm feeling down, angry, depressed, whatever it is, then that is a good use of my time that moves me forward, at least in a right direction. And usually that forward movement in the right direction also helps improve my mood. Because a lot of times we get pissed off or upset about things, it's because we cannot control the outcome of something. We wanted something to be a certain way, and it didn't end up being a certain way. And just like children, we get pissed off at that. Now, how pissed off we get on that is completely different, but we just have to allow that child part of us to feel those emotions, to and then just like you would teach a child, channel that energy into something more productive. And if it's a lot of energy, if they got a lot of anger or something, then you need to physically move and you need to get that out. And sometimes they just need that nap. And then all of a sudden, they're this cheerful, happy, bubbly child again, and they are good to go. So giving them that nap, and I watch this so carefully, and I tend not to give too much weight or value to the emotions that I feel if I am hungry, angry, lonely, tired, or sick. Any of those 5, hungry, angry, lonely, tired, sick. It stands for HALTs. Stop what the fuck you're doing, don't move forward, do not pass go. Process those emotions, feel them. You may have to write things out, journaling that stuff. And when you journal that, you have to be no holds barred, unfiltered. Get that stuff out, be as mad as you need to be, say the things that you wouldn't say normally, and let that out, because that is a way to acknowledge, affirm. You're not denying your feelings, you're feeling them, you're processing them in a healthy way that doesn't harm others. Okay. Now, if you do have other people around you and you are in this mood where you kind of need space, one of the things that ends up happening, especially if we've grown up in dysfunctional homes, we develop these coping mechanisms that end up hurting other people. And we do that because we're doing it in a way that we don't realize, well, here. It is basically, this is the only way we know how to get our needs met, so we may react in certain different ways that are, they worked for us in that old situation, but they could be causing harm in this particular situation. So, for example, if you know you have a temper, right? I have a temper. People don't think that, but I have a temper. And I often need space to like calm down. So if you kind of corner me, things are not going to go well. And I tend to lash out. So because I'm aware of my reactions, I'm aware of how I respond, I will make sure that I find some space, I will back up. And now, as I've gotten better, I also communicate that I actually need some space. I reassure the other person it's not them. Even if I'm upset with something they said, I will get that space that I need. I will communicate that I just need to be left alone right now so that I can get through this. And then afterwards come and talk. Because if you try to reason with me in that state, when I'm in that emotional state, there could be some things that get said that you don't really mean, so never speak in the heat of the moment. Always allow yourself to calm down and get yourself to a more rational state before you try to argue. And also, don't try to chase somebody down if they are in that emotional state. So some people, they tend to run away with it. If they run away, let them run away, because I've made that mistake before. My mom is a bit of a runner. And I would want to, so as soon as things started getting difficult and we'd go to have a conversation, and I'd be calling her out on something that we actually need to friggin' talk about, she would be like, and run away, right? And I made the mistake one time that I reached out and I grabbed her shirt and I pulled her backwards, and I was like, oh my God, I did not just do that. So, not a good thing. Allow people their reactions that they have, and know what your reactions are so that you can communicate what you actually need in that moment. So there's people that I've worked with. I know that if their temper got fired off, you did not fuck with them. You did not fuck with them because things would go really, really badly, and they had, like, some people have a really strong fear aggression kind of response to things. So recognizing when it is a good time to talk things out and when you actually need more time, you need a little bit of space so everybody can calm down, become more rational again. Because if you try to push the envelope and you address it in that moment, you guys are going to end up clashing, and then instead of just the original issue that you had that might have been a small thing, now it's escalated into this whole fucking control issue that people aren't feeling safe, they don't feel heard, and then it's a back and forth, and then nothing gets resolved. So it's kind of like you both have to go to your corners, calm the fuck down, and then deal with things. How do I know this stuff? Because I refereed a lot of these kind of fights growing up. I would jump in the middle. In the later years, so my mom had this boyfriend. He was a heavy drinker, and he got really mouthy and belligerent, and would just say really mean, nasty things. My grandmother used to fight with him. Stuff didn't escalate when I was around. I tend to be that calming influence, and I would kind of be the one that would jump in and kind of mitigate things. But I remember stories of the times that I wasn't around. It's like, my grandmother went over a picnic table down at the campground to grab this guy by the throat. Because he would say really things that would get under your skin, and it just would trigger people. And then he'd cry the victim when people would be abusive towards him. And it was just all this chaos and drama and shit that would happen in our family. And my grandmother went over the picnic table at him, grabbed him by the throat, knocked him down on the ground. My grandfather had to come over and try to pull her up. And she had these bruises on her arms and everything. And I got a bit of my grandmother's spirit in me. So be forewarned. But, she did those kind of things, and he just had this way of rubbing her the wrong way, and she would just snap. And so that being said, this guy, he would, my brother and I was probably around 18 or so, 18, maybe 19. My brother and I would hang out in his room. We had a second TV there. We could watch what we wanted rather than what he wanted on the TV. And he used to like to watch wrestling, so we joke that it was WWE night, Saturday night, and then it would turn into a fight. And my brother and I could sit there and we could feel the tension, and we knew when the fight was going to start happening. And then sure enough, they'd, just like clockwork, You could predict the behaviors, and it was ongoing. It was so consistent. Consistency is not always a good thing, right? So in these kind of dysfunctional behaviors that I grew up with, there was a lot of friggin' consistency. Not the right kind of consistency, but it was consistent. So we could predict that when the fight and the voices would start getting louder, and by this time I was so desensitized to the stuff that had gone on that I would wait. And then when it got to the point where my mom was now crying, that's when I would come out of the bedroom and I would step in and I'd break up the argument, break up the fight. And usually that meant that this guy was like this close to my nose and screaming, spitting as he's screaming, full on drunk. And I just would be so calm. And the more emotional he got, the calmer I got, which drove him even crazier. So there'd be many times that I'm surprised he didn't haul off and hit me, and I don't know if it was the confidence I displayed at the time. Inside, I was shaking, I was losing my shit, and I was scared to death. However, I didn't back down, and I was like, do you feel better now? And he'd like do stupid things like threaten to commit suicide, and I'd be like, do you want me to grab a chair? I can help you off the balcony right now. Let's go. And I'd call his bluff on those kind of things. And he just wanted certain attention, and he just wanted control. So knowing that when somebody is in that extreme emotional state, do not engage, do not contribute, do not react to it is the strongest way to mitigate some of those challenges that come up. And then although you're not exactly happy about what's going on, it hasn't escalated to, you know, the point where the cops are called and people are being hauled off to jail. Because a lot of times that was, you know, the cops got called, but, you know, the fights didn't actually happen when I was around. And I'd always get stories and be like, oh, for fuck's sakes, guys, really? Have I not told you, don't react to this guy? Do not go on. But those are the kinds of things that would happen as I was growing up. There was a lot of fights. And when I talk about being able to communicate those truths, because even if you don't actually say anything, so if you're walking around or they're walking around and they're really angry about stuff and they're asking, you know, well, what's going on? What's wrong? What's wrong? And you're like, nothing, fine. I've been guilty of doing that. I've gotten better at being able to at least say, you know what? I'm not doing well. I just need some space. Give me some time. And that allows people to understand what it is that you need, because you've clearly identified it. You can communicate what it is that you need. When you can calm down, then you can come back and address the issue that was bothering you. You can talk it out and be reasoned with, and somebody else can be reasoned with as well. And holding that respect for each other to give each other that space, right? That you are not reacting negatively or reacting emotionally, because that just leads to a whole lot of unhappiness. So while you're not technically happy in those moments, not adding fuel to the fire is definitely a good thing, right? Okay. And I want you to keep in mind too that one of the fastest ways to increase your unhappiness and therefore not live a happier life is to be in denial, which means don't even know I am lying. So when we lie to ourselves, when we lie to others and say, no, everything's fine, you know, or you let things slide, let things slide, and you don't say how you truly feel, then all of a sudden you get to this point where they've done it for the 10th time in a row, and how could they friggin' do that? You think that they would care about me, blah, 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 but meanwhile you've never really communicated exactly how you feel, so now you blow up because they've done it again. So there you go, you've got proof, you've got evidence that they don't give a shit about you, and now you're justified in blowing up. This would happen in the workplace quite a bit. I'd see over and over somebody would complain that, a report wasn't running correctly. And, they'd bitch about it and they'd say, this friggin' report, it's not running, it's not giving the right numbers, blah, 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 and they'd say, well, I'd ask them, again, I wouldn't react, I wouldn't jump in, I wouldn't commiserate with them, and I would just say, okay, did you talk to the IT department and let them know, Cardi Sparkle, thank you so much for the roses, I appreciate you so much. That's very sweet. So they would complain about this, and then I would calmly ask them, I'm like, hey, did you actually talk to IT? Well, yeah, I told them about this, but they haven't fixed it. And I'm like, okay. Let's talk about a timeline. When did you talk to them? Oh, I told them this months ago. Okay, great. Have you followed up with them? Did they give you a timeline of when you could expect the report to be fixed? Well, no. I'm like, oh, okay. Did you tell them that you still need this to be fixed? Well, no. Well, I'm gonna do that now. Okay. Yeah. And they'd log another ticket, and then of course they wouldn't follow up, they wouldn't do the stuff, and then a couple of months would go by and they're bitching about the exact same problem that hasn't been fixed. And I'm like, no, do you guys not understand that if a problem comes up, you try to address it, and it doesn't get fixed, you have to readdress it again sooner rather than later. Letting it slide again because now you're in a good mood and you don't want to spoil the mood is not a good thing. And I've been guilty of that too. There's been times where, things are kind of going well. It's not that big of a deal. Oh, I'm probably just tired or cranky, or I haven't eaten lunch yet, and you kind of let things slide. But just know that you have to take responsibility if you let things slide. If you've let it slide 10 times and now you're really pissed and then you try to address it, you have to give the person, you have to come at it from the perspective, this is the very first time. You're not allowed to be pissed off for the other 10 times that you let it slide because it was no big deal, because you were lying to yourself about it not being a big deal. You were lying because you didn't want to address the concerns that you were feeling at the time, and you didn't want to maybe ruin the vibe, or, oh, they're in a good mood, so I don't want to bring the room down. And it's like, I've been guilty of doing that kind of stuff too, where we don't want to address things that have been bothering us because maybe the only time things got addressed or talked about is after a big blow up, right? So understanding our own patterns and the environment that was demonstrated for us, whether that's a work environment or home environment, relationships, any of those things, right? Because if we will model those behaviors. So even if you have a healthy way of communicating and stuff like that, I throw you in a toxic work environment and you try to model those healthy behaviors, you're going to get beat down so friggin' fast for sure. Because open, honest communication in a toxic environment, that does not compute. We are not going there. And you will be scapegoated. You will be the black sheep. You will not be able to fit in that environment if you don't have their same communication style, because open, honest communication in a toxic environment is extremely threatening. So learning how to have healthy conflict, learning how to be able to talk through the things that are bothering you, and doing that sooner, and talking about how you feel rather than pointing the finger. So if you were saying, you did this, you did that, da 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 da. No, that's not the case. 3 fingers pointing back at us. So if you're pointing the finger at somebody else, you have to point the finger, 3 fingers, look 3 times as hard at ourselves, at what's going on with us, right? So expressing how you're feeling using I statements. I was feeling this way. When this happened, Not when you did this, I felt this. No, when this happened. So take the word you out of the equation completely. When you're trying to discuss things with people that you are upset about and talk about how you felt, with the understanding that you may have an incorrect perception of what their intentions were. A lot of times, people aren't doing things to us, they are just doing things. They are doing what they know works. They are doing what feels good for them. They are functioning in a way that they are familiar with. And a lot of times people are unaware that their actions have some sort of impact on other people. They think, well, I wasn't intentionally trying to harm you, so therefore it's not my fault. This is where it takes a little bit of accountability and responsibility to look at ourselves and kind of go, and it also takes a high level of trust of knowing that if that person is a good person, that they do actually care about you, that if you voice how you're feeling, that they would try to change or at least explain what was going on with them so that you guys can come to an understanding. That's how it should work. Well, maybe not should, but I find both parties tend to be happier because when I feel safe enough to actually communicate, you know what, that actually hurt my feelings, and I'm telling you this because I trust you enough that I know that you wouldn't deliberately try to hurt my feelings, and we can find some other way to kind of deal with this, right? Hey, camera service, good to see you again. Welcome back, welcome. So you can find ways to communicate in ways that are helpful and productive, even in unhappy situations where you're not feeling very good about things. You can see from the other person's perspective of what's going on with them, how they are feeling about the situation, what their thoughts, what their intentions were, right? Now, this takes two people to be very healthy, very aware of themselves, their own emotions, and a willingness to work together. Without that kind of communication, without your awareness of your own emotional stuff, and the willingness to work together to collaborate and figure out a positive solution, then things get, escalated usually, or they become lopsided, one-sided. If you're in a toxic environment, then that kind of communication is going to get shut down right away. You're going to be made out to be the crazy person for sure, because somebody like that is not willing to look at themselves. They're not willing to do that emotional inner work. And why is because it takes somebody who's really friggin' strong to be able to do that emotional inner work. And if you haven't been shown that before, if you haven't seen a healthy demonstration of those kind of behaviors, you're gonna default to what it is that you know. And that's probably the healthiest that you've done. And it's like, okay. And what you find is normal may be very threatening for somebody else. Example, I used to have friendly reminder to stay hydrated. Okay, you can probably hear something in my voice. Thank you. Yeah, my voice was getting a bit scratchy. Thank you so much. So knowing that just because you're comfortable with a certain style of communication and you're like okay with it. I had a friend of mine, her and I, we used to work together, and when we talked, we were kind of like a couple of South Park characters, and we would kind of like have this fight kind of banter going back and forth. To us, it was no big deal. Sometimes the people we were working with, they were like, oh my God, what the hell? Those two are like scrapping in the office, and can you believe that they're trying? And they would get really, really threatened by it. And we're like, what are you talking about? We're just like talking, right? we're just like shooting the shit and like giving each other the gears. And it was like,
for us, that was an understanding. We were used to our kind of abuse, if you will. Other people are used to their type of abuse, right? So for some people, it's like you don't talk up, you don't speak back, you don't speak back, you don't confront somebody directly, that you have to do these subtle kind of hints or communication methods or stuff like that, that being direct is something that's very threatening, very rude, and understanding who you're talking with and what communication style actually is what they're used to. And the best way to communicate is to understand the audience that you're actually speaking to, and to communicate with, you adjust your communication style to meet what it is that they are doing, what they are comfortable with. We have to communicate with people in a way that is comfortable with them. Okay? And that's just a good general business practice, as well as personal relationships as well. Okay. So also wanted to talk a little bit about, so if you are in a situation where you do not feel like you can actually be yourself, your authentic self, you're gonna shut down, you're gonna develop different coping mechanisms, different ways of dealing with things. So, if you have somebody who is unaware of their emotions, and they kind of, do this whole smothering kind of thing, they give you a whole lot of attention, it makes you feel uncomfortable, and you can't really say to them, like, you know what, I need a little space, because it's like, then they get all hurt, because it's like, oh shit, man, it's just like you had it at a volume 15, and I'm like, can we take it down to like a 7, something like that? It was just a bit much, it's a little overwhelming for me. But if you're not able to communicate that, then you end up defaulting to these other strategies where you might get mean or aggressive or say something, because that at least gets your needs met and it causes the other person to go away, right? So I've seen that sometimes people will display aggressive behavior as a way to give themselves the space that they need, right? So I've done that myself too, where I'd always be like, growing up in the environment I grew up in, and to keep the abuser away when I was mean and aggressive and basically a bitch, and I got labeled as a bitch, he didn't want to mess with me. He left me alone. That wasn't fun for him, but he would also punish me quite a bit for that, and I would have a lot of consequences, but at least I got the space that I needed. He left me alone. And so consequently, growing up, or taking that and not being aware of that in a work environment, if I'm getting too much attention and I find it overwhelming, I might end up being like, I'll be cold or detached, or, give a snide comment or something like that, not realizing. I don't do that as much as I used to, but it's like, you find ways to push people away. And if you're pushing people away, it's just, you need that space, and being able to understand the reasons behind your action, why you're doing the things that you're doing. And if you're in an environment where you can't express yourself in a way that that you feel comfortable with. So example, you are with somebody that they get very, very triggered if you show any anger. And so then you try to, you can't really express yourself in the way that you want to, so then you kind of squish it down, and then you end up feeling in denial of yourself. And there's nothing worse than being surrounded by a bunch of people and then feeling completely alone because you don't feel understood, you don't feel like you can actually express yourself, and you feel isolated and alone in a crowd. That is like the worst feeling. I have felt more lonely being surrounded by people than I have been being completely by myself with absolutely nobody to talk to. I'm pretty fucking cool. I'm pretty chill. I like my own company. That's perfectly fine with me. I can just stay by myself all the time. Shit gets real though when I start having to interact with other people. So those are new skills that have to be learned because you can't always do those kind of things, and it can be threatening to change that behavior and you can feel unhappy with it. It's like, oh shit, I can't use my usual techniques of getting the space. I actually have to use my voice and communicate what it is that I need and allow the other person to understand what's going on with me. So now I will say, you know what, it's not you. I'm frustrated about something else that's going on. I just need some time to get through this, to process it. And then when I'm given that time, I now don't take it out on that other person I was interacting with. I don't lash out. I don't have to make amends or apologies for any bad behavior. And that person, because we've communicated at a time when it's not an emotional issue, there's an understanding of knowing how, okay, when I start acting like this, just give me a little bit of space. Don't keep checking in on me. Are you okay? Are you okay? Because that's just going to cause things to get even worse. But because I've been able to communicate that effectively, then the other person understands. They don't take it personally. They can just go do their thing and let me have my little hissy fit by myself. And then that way there's no hurt feelings that ends up coming on. Okay? And that's the difference between detachment and loving detachment. Loving detachment requires communication. Means if somebody is having... So detachment is like the cold stonewalling. You put a wall up, you ghost people, you don't talk about things, you're just like, fuck you, get out of here. I've had enough of your shit, right? And you just like... That is not good, right? It builds this wall between you and it breaks down the relationship rather than finding ways to mend that relationship. Loving detachment, on the other hand, is recognizing, because when we are in a loving place ourselves and somebody else comes at us all angry, we can recognize that as a cry for love. And that is fear. It is false evidence appearing real, that we don't have to take that personally. However, if we ourselves are not in a good space and we react with fear, like, somebody says something to us and we get our back up about it, we get defensive, we get angry, then we're having a fear reaction as well. And then now you've got two people in fear. Those people will definitely end up having conflict. And having the emotional maturity to understand our own emotions and to know that we are always responsible for our own behavior. We are not responsible for somebody else's behavior, but we are responsible with how we behave. And if we focus on managing that piece, even when we're unhappy, we will prevent the situation from escalating. We will prevent the situation from really causing a great deal of pain and unhappiness to each other. Not always easy to recognize in the time, and it takes a few times to kind of go through this, but knowing that if you at least hang on to, I am always responsible for my actions, I am always responsible for my emotions, and if I feel hurt by something somebody else has said, I have to evaluate, is that true? Is what they said about me true? If it is, and I'm a good person, then I'm going to correct that behavior. If I am wounded because of something in the past and I'm feeling like that's not fair and it's not, I can't believe they said that to me, and I'm being defensive and not looking at my part in it, then I can promise you there's something going on from the past that kind of needs to be looked at so that you can break that chain from the past and look at today's situation. And I'll give a little bit of story. I had a friend, and this was at the beginning of our relationship. We just met, we just started talking. It was only a few months in or whatever. She said something that kind of got my back up, and I can't even remember what it was, but I told her off. And I was pretty aggressive with how I let her know that I didn't like how she was behaving and stuff like that. And she called me out on it. She's like, first of all, Tina, you and I don't actually know each other well enough for this to be such a strong issue for you. And when she did that, because I had had some therapy work, I was like, oh shit, she's kind of right. It was her behavior that was a little bit of a trigger that was reminding me of some other behavior from my family, from my mom in the past. And I was reacting to her at a level 80 when hers was only like a level 20 kind of thing, right? So a lot of times we get triggered because we haven't dealt with our past issues, our past reactions to environments we've grown up in, or work environments, or things that we've dealt with that have shaped us in different ways, that, you know, we've learned to cope in certain ways, and those certain behaviors that we bring into today. And these things happen because it's the only way we can heal and change the past is by having a similar circumstance happen today that is maybe level 20, 20 out of 100. And then that allows us to choose a different path in the behavior that's happening today, allows us to heal that past, the 80%, right? Because now, instead of just operating in default mode of the way that we were conditioned or programmed, we are now choosing a different path to move forward. And by choosing that different path, we actually change the past, because now our past programmed reactions are no longer an automatic thing. We've taken control back over our lives, and we now choose a new path forward that allows us to be happier and to be more fulfilled and have more fulfilling relationships that are filled with open, honest, healing communication. It just requires us to be willing to be vulnerable and to look at ourselves and what's going on within us, and knowing that and trusting that the other person doesn't have malintentions. Now, if they do, you also have to address that. So denying that is not a good thing either, right? So you have to start learning the difference between somebody who is reacting to something or somebody who is actually deliberately, maliciously trying to harm you. Okay? So if somebody is deliberately and maliciously trying to harm you because they feel justified in, well, you hurt me, so now I'm going to hurt you kind of thing, first of all, don't fucking do that. Don't do that. Okay? For so many reasons. One, you're going to get bad karma for that. Don't do it, because whatever you put out comes back to you. So this is another reason why I strongly mitigate it's not to say that I'm perfect, but I strongly mitigate how I respond. So even if people treat me like shit, I refuse to retaliate in kind. I absolutely refuse it. That my behavior is under my control, and there's no friggin' way that I'm going to allow them, their behavior, their pain to be proof of why they're in pain in the first place. I am not going to add to that pain. Not consciously anyway. Not to say that I can't hurt people or do things that cause other people pain. We're all human beings, and it's usually our lack of awareness. So if we treat anytime people have done something to us is, oh, they probably have a lack of awareness. And if I communicate this to them so that they are aware, then hopefully that won't happen in the future. Or we can say, okay, this is how we're going to handle this kind of situation in the future. And that can be done in your relationships, that can be done in your work relationships with a customer, whatever it is, right? You know, a customer comes at you guns a-blazing and they're pissed off because they didn't get the service that they paid for. And this is years of customer service kind of kicking in. It's like, listen, understand, and then seek to solve the problem, right? If you are doing good customer service, that's what you try to do. If you react and you kind of go, yeah, well, you're an asshole and I don't want to friggin' deal with you, well, that's within your rights, but know that you're terminating that relationship. That also will have consequences, because that one person, even though you didn't really like them so much, they have friends, they have other colleagues, coworkers, that ends up harming your brand overall. So even if you're just like, you know what, that person's a piece of shit and I don't want to work with them. Fair enough. You are well within your rights to set that boundary that you don't want to do that. Just understand the consequences of it. And did it need to be that way, or could it have actually been worked out if you had listened, sought to understand, and tried to solve their actual problem, taking principle of what they're communicating above the personality and not taking that as a personal attack? Because if we're in a good space, then we will try to solve the problem. If we are good people, we will try to solve the problem. Good people try to collaborate. Good people don't compete with each other. They try to find a solution. They try to find what's best for everybody involved. Win all around. Not just I win, you lose. That's competition. I win, you win, we all win. That is the better way. That is how we live happier lives. This is how we have happier work environments. And this allows us to be more productive, more fulfilled. And guess what? When that feels good, people will do the same thing. They will repeat those patterns. Have them get addicted to a happy work environment. Have them get addicted to a happy relationship. Have them get addicted to, hey, this actually feels good. I want to do more of this. Let's do more of this. Let's do more of this talking thing, because it doesn't suck as bad as the other programmed dysfunctional behaviors that we used to do, right? So with that, that is pretty much today's conversation of how to deal when you are unhappy with things and how to get yourself into a happier state by recognizing what's going on with you, taking care of your needs, and being able to communicate that in a way that is effective and collaborative with the other person. So, guys, with that, we're going to wrap it up for tonight. If there's anything that you have questions on, go ahead and quickly type those in the chat. I'll try to answer those. If not, you can come back again tomorrow night. 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when I will be doing live again. And if you kind of jumped in halfway, I will be uploading this to YouTube, and you can watch the replay and take notes. And there you go. Guys, if you found this helpful, make sure to share or let somebody else know, hey, you know, go check out Coach Tina B 125 on YouTube. I liked what she was talking about the other day, and just share that with others. My goal is to help 1 million people heal past trauma. And now a lot of times that's going to be in a work environment, because we spend so much time in a work environment. And that's how I can use my change management background, my personal understanding, my personal experiences of just dealing with challenging situations and dealing with the people side of a business, and being able to help businesses grow by making sure that their people get along. Okay, so guys, with that, have a great night, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Bye.